And if we
Mhm.
look back at like our primal ages, we didn't want to be ostracized or kicked out from the group. It's basically survival. And so we still have those instincts. If we're rejected from the pack, are we going to be okay? Are we going to be safe? And so that's where this true understanding of being okay with yourself and asking yourself, is it worth it? Sure, you can. It's at the end of the day, it's a decision. You can keep your masks on to be connected to the other masks, but there's this real beautiful process when you take your mask off and you're able to be with yourself and to sit with yourself and then find the truth in who you are, and that opens the doors to
And attract that.
and attract that.
Hey there, welcome or welcome back to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I am your host, Amber Erickson Hurdle, and today is an important episode, and it's going to be a great episode, by the way. I am really excited to introduce you to my new friend, Dr. Jennifer, and more on that in a minute. But we are in a new season of the podcast, and it is going to be the final season of the podcast. And I know I tried this before and then came back because of so many reasons, but I'm not going to Garth Brooks it this time. I really mean it. We're wrapping this up, and there's so many reasons why. And I didn't even write any notes down to have this conversation with you because I just want it to come completely from my heart because you've been with me through a lot, and a lot of you write to me and say it's like we're friends and you're just hanging out talking with me and whoever I'm hanging out with as my guest. And so I feel like I owe it to you to not like have anything rehearsed because we're just friends, right? And the crazy thing is so many of you have actually become my in real life friends, and whether they're guests or listeners who became customers who became friends, like this podcast has been absolutely transformational for me, my life, my own sense of self, my own bombshell journey. And it's just time. It's time because I've come a long ways, and it's not that I'm not completely proud of this podcast. It's just that I'm not having weekly conversations in a tone and on a brand level, which if you're not a new listener, you know, but if you are a new listener, that's kind of my bag. Like I'm ranked globally for it. That's what I do every day, all day. And and that encompasses personal brands and leadership. That encompasses culture, company culture, that because that's part of your employer brand. That's marketing that supports your business brand and PR and all of those things. And I know we talk about all of those things, but then I wrap it in lipstick and I put it out into the world, and I love that because I want to speak your language and I want it to be approachable. But the challenge in that is that it's taking me away from what my day job is to go do this over here, which I've been happy to do, and I've always considered it my give back. Um, but I have three people, sometimes more, really four people who in some way touch this podcast, and it doesn't really do anything for our customers and it doesn't move us towards our goals. It's just kind of like this pet project that I've had for the longest time. And so the reality is on that space of just time, is that I'm still going to be here. I'm not going to have the Bombshell Business podcast after this season, which there's going to be multiple episodes as usual. You'll just have to follow my YouTube channel. So go over and find Amber Hurdle. You can find it if you go to amberhurdle.com. Just go to the bottom. It's a train wreck right now, but we'll clean it up. We'll figure it out. We figure out everything, right? So thank you to the seven of you who watch the podcast on YouTube. But we're going to be more active there. So I'm not going away. We can still be friends, please. And if you're on my email list, then you hear from me every single week, and you will. And I like to think that it's valuable. I'm not really salesy in what I do. I like to give advice. So from a time perspective, that's where we are. And then from a messaging perspective, again, it's the most content that I put out because since COVID, I haven't really been crazy about my content, and it's confusing. So like right now, if I think about all of my core reoccurring long-term clients that I interact with day to day, there's legitimately only two women. And one, well, yeah, yeah, two women. If we're not talking about the speaking side of things, but just consulting and coaching and that sort of thing, two women. And so that's a really confusing message, and I've been in situations before where somebody introduces me and they don't talk about branding and they don't talk about leadership and they don't talk about my leadership program or the fact that I'm the CEO of an employer branding agency. They don't say any of those things. They say she really helps women in business. And of course they say that because that's what I put into the world. And yeah, I absolutely do. And sometimes, yes, I do have more female clients, but by and large, if I was being absolutely truthful, since 2020 and even earlier before that, the majority of my one-to-one clients were male and are male. So interesting fun facts, right? Behind the scenes. So um, it's I've evolved as a person, and not to say that you evolve out of bombshell. Like this is I will always be a bombshell. I have a bombshell pillow on my bed. I am a bold, brave female entrepreneur. I am a bold, brave woman in business, just like you. And we're still on the same journey together. But in terms of this brand, it just doesn't feel like it fits anymore. And so I share that with you. And of course, I'm going to have a whole lot more to say this season, but I just want to thank you. If this is your first episode, thank you. If this is your 100, whatever, 200 episode, thank you. Thank you for being on the journey with me, and promise me you won't stop serving other women and empowering other women and encouraging other women, because we're still going to be doing that. And you better believe that if I go to a women's conference as a speaker, like we will bombshell it up, right? But in the meantime, this is such a great episode to make this announcement because my new friend, Dr. Jennifer, she and I could have chatted all day long. I mean, just absolute girl crush from the word go. And so we're going to talk today about unmasking. And that's been this true journey that I've been on, if I think about it, since like really Q4 of 2019. And it's well, maybe that's a whole other episode. I won't say that, but it just really spoke to me because I've gone through this process just like Jennifer did. She caught on a little bit earlier in life than I did. But some of the things that really stood out to me were that there are really three common masks that we can use, maybe a couple of them, but we all probably wear one of these masks. And then there's other masks that we put on too. But the three that she names is really compelling. She walks through how to dismantle the mask so that you can live in your truth, so that all of the negative implications of masking ourselves are thwarted. And we're going to get into what those implications are. And I just have a feeling, Bombshell, that this is going to be one of your favorite episodes because we've all experienced this. I would think, unless somehow you just got through childhood and adolescent and early adulthood and everything unscathed. Good for you. And she takes us through a really step-by-step process and gives us real true questions to ask ourselves on that journey. And something else that she talks about is, and this is something Joyce Meyer talks about a lot as well, and that's your thoughts turn into behaviors and actions, and then those are the results that you get. So it's just a little bit of let me get you up to speed on where we're going on this episode. And let me tell you all about Miss Jennifer. Dr. Jennifer Blossom is the CEO of Blossom Leadership, specializing in mental edge training for women leaders. Her programs enhance psychological skills and mindset for optimal impact and well being. Through international retreats, workshops, and coaching, Jennifer empowers women to unmask the illusion of superficial success, break free from internal chains, and build a life with unwavering focus, confidence, and authenticity. Kind of sounds like a bombshell, just saying. Additionally, and we'll just throw this in, Dr. Jennifer is the owner of a pediatric therapy practice south of Seattle, Washington. So, no big deal. Featured on global media networks, including Fox News and the CW, Jennifer's expertise is sought after for her insights on leadership and personal development. She also hosts the Dr. Jennifer Blossom Show podcast, inspiring over 1 million listeners with strategies for soul success and impact. I think you're really going to love her. I think you're really going to love this discussion that we have. I think that you're going to find yourself in the discussion with us and being like, yeah, girl, me too. Oh, I remember that. Or, yes, that's exactly where I am right now. Or, ooh, maybe I am doing that. Maybe I need to ask myself these questions. Wherever you are in the journey, I just really invite you to maybe save this one and come back to it and listen to it a second time. Because if I would have had this information, or maybe just even the awareness of it a long time ago, I think that I could have probably saved a lot of medical issues and psychological issues and so much more. So, as my gift to you on my first gift of the last season of the Bombshell Business Podcast, I introduce you to Dr. Jennifer Blossom. All right. Welcome to the Bombshell Business Podcast, Jennifer. We're happy to have you today.
Amber, thanks for having me. It's going to be a great conversation.
It is. So I have to share with the audience, like our pre-conversation was getting pretty good.
Mhm.
So, and then I always get to that point where I'm like, oh, I can't ask any more questions because then we won't have like the real exchange on the show. So I am personally super excited about this because it's all about the unmasked leader. That's your jam.
Mhm.
So let's just start there. Why did you choose the term unmasked or unmasking? Like, what does that mean to you?
It came from a season of hitting my own rock bottom, of realizing that I was a leader who was the most successful we have ever been on paper, materialistic wise, all the things that society measures quote unquote success by. We were
Yeah.
living it and we were living it loud and proud. And in that season, I hit such a hardcore rock bottom. There's this phrase called the dark season of the night or something, some iteration of that. And in that season, I realized I couldn't go on, to the point, Amber, where I was on a run at about 6:20 it was actually 6:29 in the morning. And I had the biggest anxiety attack that I've ever had in my life. I heard audibly all of these gunshots, and I had this vivid, wild vision of my kids and my husband in this screen, this like plexiglass screen, and I couldn't reach them. And in that moment, I heard this
Mm.
really loud voice of, well, why don't you go kill yourself? And I was like, what? Fell to my knees, couldn't get back to my house, was so dissociated in my body and my mind. I could not get back to my house. I didn't tell anybody that story for 2 years. And I was so scared of myself. So I was running from myself. I was numbing out. I was so afraid of what that sentence, never had any inclination or will or thought to do that, but I couldn't get over why that sentence came into my mind. And it scared me for 2 years. And I got stuck in this mental rut over and over and over and over. And so the pitfall continued. And so it was this silent suffer for 2 years. And all of these masks that I had on, I was still leading with a smile. I was still leading with a perfectionist. I was still leading all of these companies and building this and doing that and doing all the family and the community things. And in this silent hell that no one knew about, until I realized like I had to confess and get help, and just the whole journey began. And so it was this slow process of realizing I was faking and had this huge facade on and broken on the inside. And I was leading, but I wasn't leading to my fullest ability. And so when I
Yeah.
started to take all of those masks off and do all of the inner work of how I couldn't see clearly, I wasn't speaking the truth, I was in the facade, the unmasking began, and this truth of authenticity and healing and impact and zest and excitement, it all came through. And that's a very dramatic story, but it's my story. And I believe that we are in these experiences to share that message with the world, and now these tools and this awareness. And so it's been a beautiful, messy journey. And now to the point where I am healed from that and get to share this work with others. So that's a
Yeah.
very deep intro story, but it's the truth.
I kind of figured we'd be wading out in the deep end
Yep.
for that because unmasked is it's a big word.
It's a bit.
Now, do you mind if I ask you, you could totally hard pass on
Yes.
this. Do you mind if I ask you what your age was when you had that moment?
Yeah, I was 32.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about that mask, and I know what you mean. You don't even realize that you're doing it. You don't even realize that you're wearing it.
Yep.
Like you think that this is who I am and this is the here are all the roles that I have to play. And so let me just like Mod Podge that together. And then here's the mask that I put on so that I can handle all of these things all at once. And then that's like smothering,
Mm,
right? That mask becomes smothering.
yes.
And, I even just look at all the masks I had to take off and like, people legitimately say like you had a glow up or you don't even look the same. Like you don't even look like the same person as that person. I'm like, well, of course not, because I took the mask off. You can't even see that person doesn't exist. It was a mask, and I didn't even realize I was wearing it.
Yes.
So, and I was a leader and I was in the community and I was this and I was that. And I was just like busying myself, like just trying to meet everybody's expectations and keep it all together for everybody. And it didn't matter if you were doing this or you were acting wrong or you were taking advantage of me or if I was acting codependent, or it didn't matter. It was like, oh, it's on me to keep it all together.
Yes.
That's my job. That's my job in
Yes.
life, is to keep it all together.
Yes. Right.
Bag that.
Oh, bag it.
No, it ain't.
Right. Regardless of what's going on the inside. So then we run faster and faster and faster, and we busy ourselves and we overcommit ourselves because we can't be with ourselves. And what
That's right.
happens is we develop these chains, agreements, strongholds of superficial success and this artificial living, and we don't experience the soul transformation, the meaningful impact, this renewed purpose that when we can tap into that as leaders, it changes everything. And so the first part, like you were experiencing, Amber, is the awareness. It's the awareness of the masks we're wearing. And 10 times out of 10, leaders don't realize it because they've become crutches. They've become our
Yep.
comfort. They've become like our
Yep.
adult wubbies. And I mean, I have a clinic here, and yeah, and I'm like, we have kids all the time, but that's what started this journey as well, is working with so many children who are experiencing emotional dysregulation and realizing there's such a correlation between children and these high level leaders. And for kids that are using these wubbies, it's like our wubbies are masks and they're our comfort, they're our safety. We can hide behind them, but we're not being true to ourselves or to others.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. But I want to, before we even dive in, because I got like a pertinent question.
Yeah.
Before we even dive into that, I just want, I had to learn how to show myself grace because, I talk about these things. I talk about leadership. I talk about these things. And I was like, wait, what were you doing? Like, I thought I was doing all the things and I still was not. And here's one thing, and this is a consequence that we don't talk about when we're doing all this self-help stuff and everything. Like, and I say that tongue in cheek. My audience knows that I'm just constant, like I live in the deep end. But when you unmask, if the people around you are dependent on you wearing your mask for their mask to stay in place,
Mm,
there's a lot of risk there.
there's a lot of risk there. I
And when you start,
yes.
you lose people, you lose relationships, you lose community, you lose all the infrastructure, not all the time, because like obviously you're married, like there's that side of things, but oftentimes when you do unmask, and it's like what were those little Dr. Seuss,
Mm,
like they had the star in their bellies and then the snooks or whatever they were. I don't remember
yes.
what it's called, but it's like you have a star, you don't have a star. You can't play with us because you don't have a star. Like you kind of get into that space of like, I'm taking my mask off, and now me taking my mask off is pointing out that you're still wearing one.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable for people. They don't want to look at you
You're right.
in your light.
You're right. You are so right. And we have to be okay with that. And we have to be able to have our own back,
Yeah.
regardless of what may or may not happen to our relationships with others. And the core of that, Amber, is rejection. We don't if we look
Mhm.
back at like our primal ages, we didn't want to be ostracized or kicked out from the group. It's basically survival. And so we still have those instincts. If we're rejected from the pack, are we going to be okay? Are we going to be safe? And so that's where this true understanding of being okay with yourself and asking yourself, is it worth it? Sure, you can. It's at the end of the day, it's a decision. You can keep your masks on to be connected to the other masks, but there's this real beautiful process when you take your mask off and you're able to be with yourself and to sit with yourself and then find the truth in who you are, and that opens the doors to
And attract that.
and attract that to the other
Yeah.
yes, the deeper connection, not the superficial, the
Yeah.
deeper connections that at our core in our soul we truly crave.
Yeah, for sure. And I've always said, like always said, I'm try to be cautious with that word, but
Mhm.
as long as I can remember, is like if you just do you, then you will attract the right people and opportunities to your life. Again, thought I was doing it. I was not. Now I am. I'm like, oh, that's how that works. So it's like, yeah, you lose, but then when you lose, you make space for the new. So with that, just, spoiler alert, fair warning, let's dive into the type of masks that leaders are wearing today. Like what do you see the most of
Yeah.
just in your practice?
I
And not your pediatric
right. No,
practice, but
it's a beautiful thing. And this is, I've had hundreds of clients and organizations and keynote, all the things from all over the world. And there is from all walks of life, I have found three very common masks, not end all be all, but three that
sure.
seem to stick out the most from all of these experiences, and they're thread and woven in between. And the first is the perfect performer mask. So this is the
Mhm.
leader who was on the pursuit of flawlessness, of flawless competence, of flawless achievement. She or he is experiencing this internal pressure to conform because of societal expectations, company expectations, peer expectations, whatever it is. But what happens is when you have this perfect performer mask on, right? Like you were saying, Amber, like we want to hold it all together regardless of what's going on internally. It leads to burnout. It leads to disconnection. It leads to poor self-awareness. And so we're leading still, and we're really good at holding it all together because we just rally and it's what we do. But over time, it can lead to high functioning anxiety, high functioning stress, high functioning depression, all of these things that aren't really being talked about in the leadership spaces. And so the perfect performer mask is one that I see probably right on up there with one of the number one, number two masks that so many of our leaders struggle with. And it leads also to the second mask that I see is the unwavering strong leader. So this is the leader who maintains a really strong composure despite any personal challenges or vulnerabilities. And I feel like leaders, we have this stigma on us that we can never be weak or we can never have emotions. It's just not showing up with emotional responsibility, right? Like we can't be emotionally irresponsible in the workplace with our teams, but we can take responsibility for our emotions, which means we don't suppress them. We don't avoid them to appear to, to not be weak or what have you. But if we're not learning how to recognize our emotions, how to feel them, how to process them, what to do with them, we get emotionally exhausted and we get numbed out. And that's where I
Yeah.
was, Amber, is years and years and years of being completely numb. And when I was in my rock
Yeah.
bottom, I realized I couldn't feel the love to my kids. I couldn't feel love to my husband. I couldn't feel love to myself. If I can't feel that love, how can I love and lead others? And so
That's right.
there's this real dance between being a strong leader and a sensitive leader, knowing how to feel and knowing how to help others feel, to empathize with others. Emotionally
Yes.
resilient leaders are
Oh my gosh.
are such strong leaders, and it when we can build emotionally resilient organizations from the top, it will radically transform workplaces. And
Yeah.
also, like, we're not sacrificing these long-term, goals for short-term gains, that
Yeah.
we see so much of a derailment in decision making because of how leaders are feeling, and we don't even realize that. So that unwavering strong leader, huge mass that we got to break down. And then the last one is the selfless caretaker. So whether you're a mom, a dad, an aunt, like we all have people we take care of, and it doesn't have to come into parenting roles, although it can. We're also seeing a new generation of taking care of our parents, or
Yeah.
what have you. We are all caring for others, even your teams, in some capacity. But when we prioritize
Adult kids.
adult kid, right? But when we prioritize their needs over our own, or we prioritize the needs of the team, the organization, in an unhealthy way over our own, and we constantly neglect our own needs, again, it just feeds into the fire of emotional neglect, running from ourselves, the numbness. It just keeps us further and further away from our true north. And so these are the three masks that I see leaders struggle with significantly without even realizing it. And it's so hard.
And then you put layers on it too, because
Yeah,
then there's the masking of like your own demographics. Like,
right.
I mean, I have so many African American friends, Black friends who, they have to mask their voice. They have to
Yes.
mask their just their language, like how they speak. And we all have to do that to an extent. Like I'm not trying to say cuz like listen, I love Jesus but I cuss a lot. I
Right.
don't obviously do that in the workplace cuz it's not appropriate.
Right.
So it's, I'm not saying that you should be able to say and do whatever you want to, but there are just like even like dialect or things like that, or like Southerners who try to get, I have my nice little slight Southern accent, but they try to get rid of that. Also, they could fit into one of these buckets that you have, or,
Yeah.
or women. Like I've coached so many women over the years who, and it's funny because I coach men too, and then like the men's perspective, but then the women think that they have to like have this super masculine experience and they put that mask on instead of like stepping into their feminine and leading from the
Mhm.
feminine space. And like we could just almost layer masks on these three core masks that you found or have found to be, and I completely agree with you, by the way. When I'm looking, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
yup, yup.
Yes.
Perfect performer, unwavering strong leader, and selfless caretaker.
Yes. Yes.
Crushed it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and like you said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So I take
Yeah.
it even further with the trainings that we do, and like have these actual visuals of our mouths are masks. So COVID's a perfect example, right? Like having a
Yeah.
mask over our mouths, which we can't speak our truth. Like you were saying, we're like muzzled. Or we can
Yeah.
have like an eye mask. We can't see the truth. We don't have the clarity of our life, our vision. And so there's these, like you were saying, Amber, masks within mask within mask within mask. It's this whole process, and we realize that we've been masking our whole lives because we've never been taught how to unmask, if you will.
Yeah. I know I really pushed my team. We were on a team call yesterday and one of our directors said, I'm sorry that I'm a little bit slower, but we're going to get there. And I said, you literally said day one, this is your process of creativity.
Mhm.
And like so far, everything that you touch turns to gold. And so if it takes you 3 days and it takes me 1 day, why do I care?
Right.
Like, I don't need you to be me. I don't need you
Right.
to move at a clip like me. I need you to be you, and that's why you're on this team.
Yeah.
And, like, I think the more that we can reinforce those things, like, we can unmask, and that's the first, step in almost I don't wanna say demanding, that's a really aggressive word, but, like, expecting authenticity at work, like, psychological safety, a place of belonging no matter what. At the time of this recording, it's Pride Month. Happy Pride! Happy Pride! Um, I just hurt for my LGBTQ plus friends who can't talk about their relationships at work
Mhm.
because then they'd be unmasked and now they'd be treated differently because they're gay. You know what I mean? Like that's wild to me because when I have conversations with my gay friends, it's the same conversations that I have with my straight friends. What'd you have for dinner? Oh, you found a great recipe. Oh, here's a cocktail that you went. Hey, well, where are you guys going on vacation? Awesome. Like, oh, is your mom okay? She just had surgery. It's the same conversation. Like there's no like gay button that they get that suddenly they have some weird conversation they have to have at work and yet they feel like they can't be who they are. at work,
Mhm.
because then they're not the perfect performer or the unwavering strong leader or the selfless caretaker because they might make somebody else uncomfortable. So, anyways, all right, I'm getting off of my bandwagon here. You don't even have to agree with anything to expect people to show up for who they are. Like,
Right.
you don't even have to bless choices other people make in order to say, but if that's who you are, then that's how I want you to show up. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
okay, so how do we start dismantling these masks?
Mm. That's the question, right? That is the question, and it is, and I always preface this, whether I'm do like this, like doing a podcast or we're actually like in the heart of it with our teams, is it it's the work. It's the work. And so what I want to do is I always want to like lead people into, you got to do the work. And so this is
Yeah.
this is the work, aka podcast version. So what I'll do, Amber, this is cool, is we'll just go through. I love acronyms. So I had the
Yep.
acronym of SHED. The first time I did this keynote, my husband was like, "You never told the ladies there that this wasn't like a shed where all the tools are." And I was like, "Babe, like I meant like shed, like shedding the layers." So I always clarify now, this is not a tool shed. This is like us like shedding, the unmasking process, although there are tools in this. So anyways, SHED, we're going to go through a question for each of these letters, if you will. And I would love if our listeners can write this in a journal or a piece of
Yep.
paper and start doing the work, because we're very quick to go outside for the answers. But honestly, all the answers are within here, are within your
That's
heart,
right.
within your head. And so being able to have that trust and that confidence with yourself will begin the unmasking process. So the S is for self reflection. So when you're able to ask yourself, what drives my need to project flawlessness? What drives my need to project flawlessness? And really looking at, am I focused more on those external gains? Am I focused on internal gains? How do I think about myself? How do I see myself? All of these questions to really fuel your answer of, why am I doing what I do? And when we
Yeah.
can take our time with this question, really answer it and marinate on it and let yourself journal through it, you're going to get to the core of what's driving your behavior, because your thoughts, your actions, your outcome, I mean, they're all related. And when you can figure out why you're doing what you do, it's going to give you insight of if you are feeling aligned with that. And if you're not, this is a really cool way to build the steps to start to overcome that. So that's the S. The H is for you to be able to honor your authenticity. We are so quick to catch words that have been spoken over us from society, from our upbringing, from peers, and maybe those words aren't or haven't been healthy words. Maybe those words are words that have taken on narratives and a life of their own, that have now become these eye masks of limiting beliefs, of ways in which we see ourselves in a light that we don't fully agree with. And so when we can get clarity on what is our heart's true desire and understand what's working in that, what's not working in that, and we can begin to build our life instead of managing it in a place from authenticity and honor that authenticity, that is a key piece in the unmasking process. The E is all about embracing resistance. And we had touched on this sort of
Oh,
in an
girl.
iteration previously of, okay, if I begin to unmask, it's going to make other people uncomfortable and I might be ostracized or kicked out of the group or whatever it is. And expect it. Expect it, because the choices, you can stay and remain safe, or and if you choose that, is it worth being and feeling disconnected from your true self? Because if you can expect resistance, embrace resistance, and even prepare yourself for how it might show up in your life as you begin to unmask, then it's not a surprise. And you continue to work on loving yourself, having your own back, and sitting with the discomfort. Like, a feeling is not going to kill you. A feeling is going to be uncomfortable, and you can handle uncomfortable feelings because you
That's right.
begin to hold space for them and know what to do with them. So you can expect resistance, you can embrace resistance, and you don't make it mean anything about you except that you're doing the work. And that's a real beautiful process.
And that's hard, especially when you are the overachiever, you're the
Yes.
perfect performer in your language. I know there's times with my partner where he's just like, um, he doesn't like, I want to be careful because my partner allows all of my emotions.
Yeah.
He's wasn't say allow, he can't allow, only I can allow, but he holds space for all of my
Mm.
emotions. But I can tell sometimes where I'm just like, I might be irritated or angry. I know that anger is a secondary emotion. So I'd really need to sit with it to be like, well, what am I really feeling? Like, what is that? And
Mm.
I just have to look at him sometimes and be like, I just need to feel it. I'm going to get over it, but I just need to feel this
Yes.
real quick. Let me feel it. And then
Yes.
I'm going to circle back and then like we could talk about it. But right now I just want to be mad right
That
now.
and that is true, and we can't run from it, we can't outrun it, it's gonna run its course, it comes in
That's
like a
right.
wave, and then it goes out, and that's where we get
Yep.
in trouble, is because the second it comes up, we wanna suppress it down and push it down,
Yeah.
and so we have years and years and years of all of these emotions that have been pushed down and suppressed, and then they begin to manifest themselves in different ways in all of us, whether they're physical.
Inflammation of the
Yes,
body.
exactly. Inflammation of the body, inflammation of the mind, inflammation of the
Yep.
heart, like in so many different ways. And so that's why we have to be able to feel it, to recognize it, to feel it, to know that that's going to pass and to be able to work through it. It is so important. And that leads us to our last one, which is the decide. Like to
Yeah.
decide that you are not what your past says you are. You get to decide and redecide and recommit every single day to intentionally choose your thoughts. I always say we sometimes we cannot always choose our first thoughts, but we always have the ability to counteract that thought with a second
Yes.
to know what to do with that thought when it comes on and to either reject it or to work through it or to rebuild it. And then from that, we're able to choose and plant very powerful, purposeful thoughts that are defined with my core values and aligning my actions and thoughts with those values. And so making that
Mm.
decision every day to not make agreements with your past but that's not to not reject your past, right? Your past got you to where you are today. And we love that version of yourself. And we actively work in deciding every single day to recommit ourselves to building and choosing our thoughts, our actions, our values into the woman or the man that we know that we are called to be. And it's this constant decision every single day to commit to that because it's a daily choice. We can commit to the comfort or find comfort in the discomfort of the constant expanding and unmasking. And this process is never done. There's no rush. Like we are always on this growth journey of unmasking, stepping in, becoming, and not like that we're always striving for this, but we're good with who we are and we constantly become who we're meant to become.
Yeah, and I love that you said my core values because I mean, obviously we do a lot of that in business as leaders. We hire, we fire, we
Yeah.
coach, we counsel, we discipline, we reward, we recognize, we promote, all based on values. And then like you ask people, what are your personal values? And they're like, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh, well then how do you make decisions in your life?
Right?
Like, girl, there are 2 words that drive me. One is freedom. That is my number 1 performance value. Like, if
Mm.
you move me away from freedom, you gotta go.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Like, that's not in my space. And the second one is harmony.
Mm.
You either move me towards harmony
I
and we can be friends, or you're net neutral. But if you move me away from harmony, you got to go.
I
Like
love
those
that.
are two just really easy. Like I have other ones, obviously family, like, but like the core, if I know you're taking me away from harmony, you're taking me away from freedom, I am running
Mm.
as fast as I can away from whatever that is. Period. End of discussion.
I love that.
Because that will take me under and I will go right back to where I came from.
Yes, and that makes me cringe because Amber, that awareness that you have is incredible, and so many people aren't there, and so they're not even aware of, like you said, what those values are, what drives them on a personal level, and the way that those personal values impact professional values is mind blowing. So when we can connect the two and have this harmonious connection, it it expands everything in such beautiful, authentic ways.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, girl, I want to talk to you all
I
day. Like, we
know,
could
I
just
love
talk
it,
all day
I
about
love
this
this.
stuff. It like every other thing in the world doesn't matter until you get this part right.
No, I know.
Like, and I call it branding, and, like anybody who listens to my podcast knows that branding is a Trojan horse for me to get to people's souls and like their confidence level, because I believe, we redefine the term bombshell to mean bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman in business. And then sometimes
Mhm.
people are like, well, you're not confident all the time. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. You fall down
Yes.
and you get back up and you just knock that dirt off your shoulder, and then you go again,
Yes.
because you know what matters to you, you know what drives you, you know who you are, and you're just going to get up, and you're like, you can't give up, like,
Yeah.
because then it's done
Because then it's
and see.
done. Exactly. Exactly. And
It's
when you fall down, like those lessons make you so much stronger, more
Yeah,
wise. You have discernment and truth and growth. I remember I had one therapist who's like, Jenny, you can sit in the post traumatic stress or you can grow in the post traumatic growth. And I
yeah,
think so many of us get caught in the stress, the
yeah,
post, not even traumatic, but post stress when we fall down. And when we can learn from that stress, learn from that fall and experience and walk in that growth, we become wiser, we have discernment, we build so much strength from that when we allow ourselves and when we don't beat ourselves up from that. And I think we are our own worst critic, and we can slap ourselves with shame and with guilt and with anger and all these things, or we can learn to process that, release that, move through it and use it for positive impact. And that's the beauty of it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just think you need to go climb into everybody's pockets, and just
Oh,
be able to be pulled out, and then people can just have like their little Dr. Jennifer moment. But there are, like, we're going to get into all the different, your podcast, like all the different ways they can find you, et cetera, et cetera. But before we get to that, and I know you have an assessment, like, oh,
mm,
so many good tools. Um, I'm going to ask you the final question I ask every single guest,
mhm,
and then we're going to hop back on the Dr. Jennifer bandwagon of all
mhm,
the good stuff. No matter if it's about what we talked about today, or something from your own personal history, or something that you see in your just experiences doing the work with people and leaders, especially, what is that parting piece of advice? If a bombshell didn't hear anything else on her journey to becoming a bold, brave, unwaveringly confident woman, or increasingly more,
mhm.
what does she need to know? Can't miss advice.
Yes, I love this. She needs to create a power sentence. A power sentence either every single day, or for me, I'm in a season now where I create a power sentence and I marinate on it throughout the week and you write it down. You have this visual reminder, whether it's on a sticky note or it's in your planner or it's on your phone and it goes off somehow, however it's going to stick to your mind. You create a power sentence for your week and it anchors you back into your truth. It anchors you into what you are working towards, what you are working through. It is a visual reminder of who you are, because we can start our morning strong. And then when the day starts, we can go up and down and around and up and down. And so having that visual cue is an anchor to remind you, oh yeah, this is who I am. This is who I'm working towards becoming. And this is why. It's just a short and sweet sentence that anchors you into who you are. It's a visual reminder every day.
I so love that. I so love that. I Best response. Love,
Aw.
love, love it. Okay. So now, let's talk about where we can find you online. So you're an Instagram gal. I'm not the best at Instagram. My Instagram account says go find me on LinkedIn. So it's Dr. Jennifer Blossom. So nothing spelt crazy. Traditional Jennifer, traditional Blossom. Dr. Jennifer Blossom is her Instagram account. Your podcast is the Dr. Jennifer Blossom Show.
Yes.
So that is fantastic. And then people can find you at drjenniferblossom.com. And then you also have I'm looking for your assessment. Yes, the unmasked assessment. So we're going to put that in the show notes so that you can take this assessment and see where you fall and what your next steps are. And then you literally can have Dr. Jennifer in your pocket, like I suggested you should have. So did I miss anything? Is there another place you hang out online that
No,
people
I'm
can
just
find
I'm
you?
so grateful for our space today and our conversation and the work, Amber, that you're doing too. It's just when we have these conversations, it's when the walls start to come down. So just thank you for opening your heart to this message and allowing me to speak to truth to your listeners. It's an honor. So thank you.
I know my bombshells in signing out. They're the best listeners
Mhm.
ever. They're so responsive. They email me, they tell me what their findings are and everything. And like, I am certain this is going to probably be one of our most popular episodes of the entire year. This
Amazing.
speaks to the souls
It
of
does.
Bombshell. So,
It does.
yeah.
Well, thank you for having me and for holding the space for this conversation. It's delicious for the soul.
Yes, back at you, girl. We're gonna stay in touch, but
For
in the
sure.
meantime, Bombshell, you know what to do. We don't have the community. We don't do all that kind of stuff because we're all going a million miles a minute. As we have mentioned for the entire episode, we have a lot on our plate these days. But what you can do that's super, super easy is just send this to somebody that you know is a powerful leader. Maybe you don't even know if they need to unmask or not, but I'm sure Jennifer and I can both tell you like 80% chance they do. So send this to somebody that might be noodling on how they can like amplify the experience that they want for their life, where they can step into their greatness and step into their true full potential, as Jennifer so beautifully described, that you have to take the barriers down in order to receive. The more walls you have up, the it can't come towards you any more than you can let it out. So
100%.
if we could stop protecting ourselves and start nourishing ourselves, we'll be wise enough and will be discerning enough to continue to protect ourselves. So it's with that wish that I leave for you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for
Mm,
being on the show one more
Amber, thank
time.
you.
And Bombshell, I will see you on the next episode.